totally integrated with differently abled people. It's very similar to Frederick, Maryland, if you've ever been to Frederick, where the Maryland School for the Deaf is. This is a little example, and I have them on the table, of how some people have hearing loss, because I want to talk a little bit about how this works. So this is very much similar to how I personally hear. The letters that are in yellow represent high-frequency sounds. The letters in green represent mid-frequency sounds. My type of hearing loss, I don't hear those sounds. So when, and even with my hearing aids, it's still sometimes hard to catch what the words are. And it's because of the type of hearing loss I have. A lot of people think that if you just yell or speak louder, that more volume actually makes it easier for us to hear, but it's really not about volume, it's about clarity. Imagine going through life and having to read, for example, where all part of the letters are missing, and you have to kind of put in the parts. That's very much how I hear. There is a spectrum of hearing loss, and it's known as an invisible disability. That is because a lot of times you don't necessarily know someone has it. I'm a perfect example of that. I have a clear voice. I know how to speak because I grew up hearing, but I started losing my hearing at about age 30, and so most people are surprised when they find out that I'm partially deaf. Here are some key facts. 15%, or about 37.5 million people in the country have some level of hearing loss. By 2030, we should expect that to reach 70 million. 1 in 3 adults over 65 have a hearing loss. And in Fairfax County alone, that's nearly 1 in every 8 people who is deaf or hard of hearing. So that means that everybody in this room has been affected by, or is personally affected by, hearing loss. Am I going too fast?
No.
The thing about hearing loss is that there's an emotional and social impact of hearing loss. It's not just a physical connection, it's deeply emotional and has some social impacts. Many people feel withdrawn from conversations and social events because they get frustrated trying to understand things. I went to the beach this summer with some friends of mine who, because I speak clearly, they forget that I'm partially deaf. And so they started making fun of me because I kept saying what? I didn't understand what was going on. And that was frustrating for me. There's oftentimes miscommunication that takes place, especially in noisy settings like restaurants or shopping centers or hospitals. Employment challenges. On average, deaf and hard of hearing people face a nearly 22.5% employment gap from their hearing companions. And there is even a greater connection to cognitive decline. So untreated hearing loss, if you don't wear your hearing aids after you've been diagnosed, just keep it in mind, there is an increased risk of dementia. And which is why early intervention and accessibility and community support are so important. What a lot of people don't understand or don't realize is that hearing aids are expensive. My hearing aids, I wear 2. They're very small. How much do you think these cost?
$250.
$3,000 for the pair. $3,000. Insurance didn't cover it. I was fortunate to be young enough to have the money to cover those things, and I wasn't on a fixed income, but yeah, my hearing aids, and I didn't know this, so I went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. My doctor visit was not covered by my insurance because it was related to hearing loss. I saw 3 audiologists. None of those appointments were covered by my insurance because I didn't have special hearing loss insurance. Just so you know as well, some Medicare, oftentimes Medicare does not cover the cost of these, and most insurances don't. And we get weekly calls about people going, please help me find a way to be able to afford the hearing aids that I need. And so that is where I'm hoping that we can start creating some collaborations, because the Mason Club's refurbishing hearing aid program could be a great way where we collect, just like eyeglasses, used hearing aids and put those into the system.
Now, I used to work for the Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired. If the client was income eligible, and I don't know what that is now, because I've been retired 10 years, we could get them hearing aids.
That's wonderful to know. Yep. I want to talk a little bit about some of the myths of hearing loss. First myth is that hearing aids restore perfect hearing. Not true. It helps people, but it doesn't really provide normal hearing. The same with something called the cochlear implant. I have several of my friends who are senior citizens who late in life lost their hearing, but they got cochlear implants. It didn't cure their hearing, it just made it better. And just so you know, when you have a cochlear implant or you have hearing aids, the sound is different. Does anybody in here wear hearing aids besides me and Jonathan? Oh, a few of you.
Oh, yeah.
It's different, isn't it? I mean, it's not bad, but it's a different sound. People who have hearing loss can just read lips and just understand everything. Boy, 30% of speech is visible on the lips, and that's not easy to do. There are some classes where you can have speech reading, but it's not the best solution. And the other thing is that a lot of people think that only older people lose their hearing, and this is not true. 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 children are born with a hearing loss. So hearing loss affects all people of all backgrounds. There is a continuum from culturally deaf to latent deaf, hard of hearing. There's a whole spectrum of where deafness and hard of hearing comes in. Culturally deaf individuals are usually people who identify and use American Sign Language and have a strong connection to the deaf community and deaf culture. Latent deaf individuals learn how to usually relearn communication strategies late in life. One of my staff members is 78. Her name is Bonnie O'Leary. She's latent deaf. She's profoundly deaf in one ear and has hearing aids in another, and she does her best to communicate. She's not going anywhere. I keep asking her if she's ready to retire. She goes, "Oh, I'm not retired." She loves work. She loves her work. Then hard of hearing individuals like me rely on hearing aids and captioning. So, like the captionings here are crucial for me when I'm in a meeting or even like in a public setting like this, because this helps fill in the blanks of the words that I can't hear.
Is tinnitus?
Sorry?
Is tinnitus considered part of the hearing loss?
Yes, it can be, absolutely. In fact, we're working on a program this year for a workshop on the tinnitus and how that affects people.
Because I see a ton of ads on Facebook for cures for tinnitus.
There's no cure
They
for
don't
it.
work.
There's no cure.
No, they don't work.
If you believe it,
Yeah.
1/4 of what's on Facebook.
There are some
It's got problems.
There are some support groups for that, though, and we're working on a program for that right now. I want to just talk a little bit about emergency situations. Like we talked a little bit about CERT. Just imagine if you're deaf or hard of hearing and the fire alarm goes off in your building, you can't hear. I have a deaf neighbor. He lives just down the hall from me. Every once in a while, I'll get a text because he's not sure, and he goes, "Is the fire alarm going off?" And I've now have just informed him that if I ever recognize the fire alarm going off, I'll make sure he gets text. But we just look out for each other. Storm warnings and being pulled over by the police, get a traffic stop, and you're deaf or hard of hearing. In our office or through the Virginia Department of Health, Deaf and Hard of Hearing, you can get a placard that says you're deaf or hard of hearing. Pull that up when the police officer comes, and then they should then make some accommodations and adjustments for you. But I have seen on video many a deaf person, especially deaf people of color, who, because they can't communicate, and then they encounter some sort of police brutality. It's a real scary situation because they have no way to say I'm deaf, and it's a problem. So we are constantly advocating for that, and the NVRC does do trainings with Fairfax County, Loudoun County, City of Alexandria, City of Arlington, and we work with emergency preparedness people and the police departments to try to help alleviate those sorts of things. Here's some effective strategies to make sure that you're communicating properly. You don't have to necessarily yell louder or talk louder, although lots of friends of mine do. They start doing this, it doesn't help. It just, because my sound is muffled. If you put your hands over your ears, that's kind of how I hear. Everything is muffled. But you should face the person directly, speak clearly. If you can, move to a more quiet space and use technology like I'm using. There are some technology solutions, and the NVRC is really a proud supporter of and a contractor with the Virginia Department of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and we do what's called TAP demonstrations, where you can actually qualify potentially, especially income levels or the type of hearing loss that you have, and get free caption phones, personal amplifiers, video relay systems, and smartphone on your phone. If you have a smartphone, there are lots of different apps. I use them all the time. We do have a demonstration room. We do not sell products, we demonstrate products. So it's a no pressure place to come in. You come in and say, I'm not sure what I need. And my tech specialist, Debbie Jones, will sit down with you and share with you all the different devices that might be helpful to you, like light alarm systems, shaker, if you have an alarm clock and you don't hear it, there are devices for that, caption phones. Sometimes people who have a need immediately for some hearing amplification can get something called a pocket talker. It's an interim, you can put little headphones on, it's got a little microphone, you can walk around, it really helps. It's a temporary solution, especially like if you lose your hearing aids and you have to wait 2 weeks, like I recently did. It's awful for 2 weeks, I was like, can't hear. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our stories of impact. The NVRC has some wonderful situations where we personally touched folks. We've got Jonathan, he's a veteran. He uses captioning devices. Jonathan happens to be here. You want to talk a little bit about your story?
I have captions on the TV, on the phone, like Darren said, every place. Because I'm a veteran, they cover the cost of all of that.
Yeah.
Caption phone is wonderful.
Also, we had recently, I met this young little boy, his name was Nolan, at the Arlington Library. We had done a presentation there for Deaf History Month. He was there with his hearing mother. He wore hearing aids. They identified him as hard of hearing, but now they've gotten to know him. It turns out that his hearing loss is really going fast, and he's profoundly deaf in one ear. But he was so excited when he met someone who knew sign language, and he wanted to learn. So we had some classes last year specifically for parents, but his mother called and said, could we bring Nolan in? And I said, you sure can. And so Nolan and his mother and father are now on their way to learning sign language so that they can continue to communicate as their son loses his hearing. And the other story that's really, I think, touching is I got a call from a woman named Catherine whose mother was of Japanese descent. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but sign language is not universal. Every country, or most countries, have their own sign language. American Sign Language, for example, the alphabet is A, B, C, D. British Sign Language is completely different. A, B, C, D, E, F. It's a two-handed alphabet. ASL was originated or it collaborated with French ASL, French Sign Language. And so, because the British back in the olden days, they didn't want to collaborate with the Americans, so we collaborated with the French on sign language. So, Catherine's mother is Japanese. Japanese was her first language, Japanese Sign Language, and then Japanese spoken language. And our senior outreach specialist, although she uses ASL, was able to meet with her mother and find a way to communicate. And then I reached out to some folks that I knew because I had recently met with my ASL teacher who was Chinese, who had done a performance at the Japanese Cultural Center in New York. And I said, do you know someone who knows Japanese Sign Language that I could connect this woman to? And those are the sorts of things that we do. So we've helped this person no longer have that social isolation. Here's some of the services that we provide at the NVRC. We are a resource and information center. We do outreach like this to educate the community. We have sign language interpreting programs. We do hearing screenings, which if you want to set up a hearing screening here, we can bring in Bonnie and she'll come down and we can set up as many hearing screenings as you want in the afternoon. It's another great way for us to collaborate. We mentor individuals and families going through hearing loss or experiencing hearing loss. We educate businesses and schools. We advocate for the deaf, hard of hearing, latent deaf, and deafblind. We have assisted technology demonstrations. We teach American Sign Language classes, and we are at community events, and we are...
There is no charge for any of the things that NVRC does.
No charge at all. At the NVRC, as I mentioned, you've heard me talk about Bonnie O'Leary, 78. Boy, she's something. I just love me some Bonnie. She goes and does all of our senior outreach. She talks about losing her hearing. She talks about hearing aids and all of that. I also have Debbie Jones, who's our tech specialist, and then Cheryl, who is my office manager. She's my right woman right next to me all the time. Couldn't do it without her. I got a finance manager, and then I have 2 outreach specialists. One that specializes in Loudon, and one that does senior care. Talk a little bit about celebrating deaf culture. One of the most beautiful aspects of deaf and hard of hearing culture is the unique culture. Deaf people do not think of their deafness as a disability, it's an identity. It's about a rich history, a strong sense of belonging, and a unique way to communicate. So what makes deaf culture special? American Sign Language, for one. It is a true language. It has its own grammar. It is not English, just so you know. Because I heard recently a political podcaster person complaining about in California that there was interpreters for all their warnings. Why can't they just use captions? But a lot of deaf people are illiterate in English because the language, ASL language, has a completely different grammar. So for example, in English we would say, what's your name? In sign language, it's your name what? It's a simple example. And so the English language is not always, doesn't translate. So sign language is very important, especially in press conferences, presidential conferences, emergency situations. There's a shared community because the deaf community is built on those shared experiences and support. And so we are looking for more awareness and engagement to help celebrate that. You can celebrate deaf culture by perhaps learning a little ASL. I know that we have at least one person here that knew a little. Attend some of the deaf events that are in the area and just continue to be advocating for accessibility. We, Jonathan here, hosts every first and third Sunday at the Wegmans in Fairfax an ASL social. Doesn't matter if you're brand new or you grew up knowing ASL. Everybody's there, comes, invites, just to have a conversation.
We spend a couple hours not talking to each other, but it's all sign. And it's a lot of fun. And for people learning, it's one way to practice. And some of the deaf folks in the deaf community attend and participate as well.
We just had an event with the Omnium Circus, and on Saturday we're at the Warner Theater. On April 12th, the month of April is Deaf History Month, and we are bringing in a woman, her name is Kathleen Brockway. She is a deaf historian. And with the city of Fairfax, they're bringing in an exhibit called the Lance Mills Signing Community. This is a community that was in the Shenandoah area that was essentially a mix of deaf and hard of hearing people, deaf and hearing people, and sign language was one of the main languages used in that community. And so there's going to be an exhibit, and on April 12th, Kathleen Brockway is going to be doing a presentation. Even though she's deaf and she's doing it in sign language, there will be interpreters, so you're all welcome to come and visit. So how can the Lions Club collaborate with us? Well, you could sponsor a free hearing screening here at the at church or wherever down here in the Mason Neck. That might be helpful. We are looking to find a way to drive and donate hearing aids for refurbishment. We're looking for partners at our community events. We host a community event called Celebrate Communication. It's at the Springfield Mall, and it'll be in September this year. You can certainly make a donation, and you can always continue to advocate for accessibility and captioning when necessary. So you can contact the NVRC for sponsorships. This is all of my information here. And if you want to contact us for services, and I can share this information with you all offline, but info@nvrc.org or on our flyer here, our brochure, all of my contact information is on the back. And we are happy to set up an appointment we'll either come to you or you can come to us.
Where are we?
Huh?
Where are we?
Oh, we're located in Oakton, right off of 66 and 123. So does anyone have any questions for me?
We have a hearing aid bank. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
Okay, we have a hearing aid bank where we provide hearing aids for people who need them. The Lions have been doing this for years.
Oh yes, that's called the HARD program.
No.
No, different?
It's the Virginia Hearing Aid Lions Bank.
Ah,
If you give me your information, I will put you in touch with our president of that. Because if you have people in need, we furnish hearing aids all the time. And
We get calls on a regular basis because people don't realize their insurance doesn't cover it.
I'll put him in touch with you, and you'll have a place to confirm, but that's one of the things that the Lions do.
That's fantastic news. Thank you so very much for that. That's exactly why I came here. Last week I learned about the Lions Club Foundation, and this week I learned about the Lions Club Hearing Aid Bank.
You learn about our foundation?